I'm just adding in some people. Let them know I'm on. This was not scheduled. Okay. How's everyone been? It's been a while. It's been at least a couple days. Let me get my situation together here. I have some information I want to give. Hello, Kearney. All right. So this is not the Boss Up Challenge. This is not official, but this is part of the Business Builder Basics talk. So this one is not really going to be, it's not going to take a personal tone. Although the inspiration for the video was because of something that I posted last night. I had watched an interview with Nipsey Hussle on the Breakfast Club, and I went looking for it because I had been hearing so much about like who he was, the work he had been doing, how conscious he was, and different things, and I really didn't know of him really before all of this happened. So I was just kind of curious, and I went and I looked it up, and I saw the interview, and I thought it was really nice. He seemed very down to earth, and he talked about, there was a portion of the interview where he talked about, according to the interview, what he said in the interview, I don't know if it's true or not, but he said that at the point of that interview, he had stopped using marijuana. He had been 5 months clean at the time of that interview, and he had spoken about the reasons why is because I guess he wanted to have more focus. He wanted to have a more clear mind. And it's not that he said he would never do it again, but he said that since he was trying to get himself together and be successful in the industry, he realized that he wanted to present himself when he's out in public and different things. He didn't want to be high, basically, and he wanted to be sharp was, I think, one of the words that he used. He also said that other people, it seemed like people who didn't smoke, he felt like they looked at him or other people who did smoke like they had a competitive edge or something like that. And so I guess because of just being more focused and alert or whatever. So anyway, he also spoke to his role as a leader in saying that when you're a leader, I guess he was implying that when you set examples for people, it can help people, basically. It can help and it can hurt. But if you are going to do something like quit smoking marijuana, he said that a lot of the people in his inner circle have stopped as well. So I just really felt good about hearing them say that, because I share in the opinion. You all, if you have been in the Boss Up Challenge videos, you've probably heard me speak about the marijuana situation a handful of times. And what I would always say is that, first of all, if you come to one of my talks, you may just be peeking in, or you may actually have a goal to change something about the way you're doing business, to change your financial situation, or something about what you're doing. So the assumption is that if you're here, you are seeking guidance or information, knowledge, different perspectives other than your own. And that's why I'm going to feel comfortable giving you my opinion and letting you know that it's my opinion and it's based on my expertise clinically as a clinician, and someone who has studied clinical psychology for, well, it's been about 2 decades now, but my formal degree, undergraduate degree, was clinical psychology, and now the doctorate that I'm getting is in clinical psychology with the specialization in neuro. And so I feel from an educational standpoint, I am a good person to speak on this. I also feel like, I was a substance abuse counselor in the Charles County Health Department for a little while, and I also worked at a substance abuse clinic in Baltimore, Maryland. And that was a great experience. I loved the work that I was doing. In fact, that was the profession I was in when I quit my job to go into business for myself. But the substance abuse position that I had gave me a lot of insight into what it's like to struggle with addiction from the standpoint of a clinician, sitting and talking with people and hearing their stories. And I worked with intensive outpatients, so I would see patients about 4 times a week for 3 hours a day in a group setting, and some individual sessions. We also had to do urine tests and everything like that. So I worked with an adolescent group, males and females, and I did a psychoeducation group on marijuana and other drug use. So people used to get sent to the health department, usually not by choice. It would be because they had gotten into some type of trouble, like a DWI or a possession charge, and they had to come there, go through the motions, and make sure they completed the program. But you also had people that were there occasionally because they really wanted to get off of drugs. And sometimes people actually, they had marijuana as an issue, and it was causing issues in their life. So I have seen people who were not using other drugs other than marijuana, but that their marijuana use had caused problems in their life and they were ready to stop. I saw the most damage and dysfunction being done when it was adolescents that were using marijuana. And so I have that experience. I also have the perspective of seeing assisted living residents that may have had a history of cannabis abuse, use, or whatever, and they may have also they may have been actually, I had one client that actually was still smoking it, and got caught on our premises doing it, and we had to report that. But so I have some experience seeing people on the later end of life when they had a history of substance use. And let's see, my other experience would be, kind of close to home, a lot of family members and friends and associates in the community I grew up in. It basically was very common that, or is very common that people use marijuana. And so I want to make it clear that this is not about a moral judgment about whether or not to use marijuana. This is not a talk about me telling you shouldn't use marijuana. That's not the stance that I'm taking. But again, I'm assuming that if you're coming here to hear these talks, that you're interested in hearing information and considering making some changes. So with regard to marijuana, there are some cognitive effects that it has. It has some, good uses, like medical marijuana. You use it for, pain, glaucoma. It definitely has medicinal uses. Generally, those are the strains that have more CBD content versus THC. The THC is what makes people feel high. The CBD has more of the medicinal properties. So that's the first thing that people don't understand usually about the distinction between medical marijuana and street marijuana or recreational. So either way though, the marijuana has cognitive effects. And the cognitive effects include a number of things. And I pulled up an article, and I also have my DSM. We'll start with that. So this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The DSM, this is the 5th edition, so that means it changes. And I used to refer to this as like the Bible of our field, but I don't do that anymore because I feel like by saying it's the Bible, it means that it's just like, this is the word. You know, this is what is, this is it basically. But what I noticed is that in previous editions, there were certain diagnoses and things in the previous editions that suddenly disappear, or they realize in the field, they changed their mind, you know, and now all of a sudden it's that disorder no longer exists. So I want to be very careful when I reference things like this, because I'm a person who, I don't just accept everything, and I don't take it just as absolute fact, because I know that things change. But this is what clinicians use and insurance companies also refer to when you're seeking treatment for these type of things. So the first thing I want to do is tell you about how it shows up in the DSM briefly. And you have 3 different ways that cannabis is addressed in the DSM. The first one is cannabis use disorder. And you have diagnostic criteria here, basically. I'm going to go over the criteria because I think some people might be interested in actually knowing what the criteria would be and doing kind of like your own self-check. You don't have to tell me here in the chat, but you can do your own self-check. So you have cannabis use disorder, and you have cannabis intoxication and cannabis withdrawal. All right, so let's go over the criteria for cannabis use disorder. So it says it's a problematic pattern of cannabis use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress, as manifested by at least 2 of the following occurring within a 12-month period. So within 1 year, you need 2 of these 11 things, 2 out of 11, for you to be diagnosed with, diagnosed with cannabis use disorder, okay? Number 1, the cannabis is often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period than was intended. 2, there is a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control cannabis use. A great deal of time is spent in activities necessary to obtain cannabis, use cannabis, or recover from its effects. 4, craving or a strong desire or urge to use cannabis. 5, recurrent cannabis use resulting in a failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or home. Continued cannabis use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by the effects of cannabis. 7, important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of cannabis use. 8, recurrent cannabis use in situations in which it is physically hazardous. 9, cannabis use is continued despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem that is likely to have been caused or exacerbated by cannabis. Okay, 10, tolerance, as defined by either of the following: a need for markedly increased amounts of cannabis to achieve intoxication or desired effect. That means you need more of it to get high than when you first started. You had to increase. Or a markedly diminished effect with continued use of the same amount of cannabis. So if you don't use more, you don't get as high. But to continue getting high and to get the effects, you have to increase the amount that you're using. And 11, withdrawal, which I will go over. That is like a separate classification. So basically those 11 things, if you had just 2 things out of those 11 things, you can be diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. Then they have specifiers. The presence of 2 to 3 of those things that I just told you about is mild. The presence of 4 or 5 of those things is moderate. The presence of 6 or more of those things is called severe. Okay? Let's jump up to cannabis withdrawal. So the criteria for this is A, cessation of cannabis use that has been heavy and prolonged, which is usually daily or almost daily over a period of at least a few months. So basically you just stop using it, right, after heavy use, heavy chronic use. B, 3 or more of the following signs and symptoms develop within approximately 1 week. Hey, Madge. Approximately 1 week after stopping. So after you stop, you need to have experienced 3 or more of these things: irritability, anger, or aggression, nervousness or anxiety, sleep difficulty, like insomnia or disturbing dreams, decreased appetite or weight loss, restlessness, depressed mood, and at least one of the following physical symptoms causing significant discomfort, like abdominal pain, shakiness, tremors, sweating, fever, chills, or headache. So out of those 7 things, you only needed 3 if you experienced them after you stopped abruptly, like smoking marijuana. Irritability, anger, aggression, nervousness or anxiety, sleep difficulty, decreased appetite or weight loss, restlessness, depressed mood, and physical discomfort like abdominal pain. So you just need 3 of those things. You also, those signs and symptoms need to cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. And D, the signs and symptoms are not attributable to another medical condition and not better explained by another mental disorder. Okay, so that would be cannabis withdrawal. And the interesting thing with cannabis withdrawal is that that's relatively new. They used to not think that you could withdraw from marijuana. And because of that, it used to be said that marijuana was not addictive. That's changed. Anytime you can have a physical withdrawal, you have symptoms after you stop using a drug, that's withdrawal, and that constitutes a component of addiction. And so now they believe that marijuana is addictive. Okay, and actually with some of the strains they have now can be highly addictive. And so one thing that people do with marijuana is they think about the old school marijuana and the way that people looked at marijuana back in the day as not being really harmful, and like don't dare compare it to like the hard drugs, when actually now you have strains that are like, you know, tens and I think I've even seen something like 100 times more potent, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, 100 times more potent, you know. So you have to consider the strain and how strong and potent this stuff is. So it's changing. It's not just what people were talking about back in the day. Okay, so it's having some, people were having some issues now. All right, so that was withdrawal. We had cannabis use disorder. And what else is in here? Okay, I think that was it for how they classify that. So anyway, this is what we use when we determine if we're going to diagnose you with a disorder of any type. But we just went over the marijuana. Now that you know how the diagnosis is made, let's talk about, because some people don't care anything about labels, and that's fine. Let's talk more about some of the things in the research that shows the effects that marijuana has, the cognitive effects. Let's see here. So I retrieved this information from an article that summarized a lot of scholarly articles from a CNN website. So whenever you're looking for information about like clinical trials or, things like this, you want to make sure the articles come from peer reviewed, like scholarly reviewed journals, basically, not just like a tabloid or Wikipedia, but you want to see that it's been actually like a research study so that you can kind of analyze the data and see what you think about the findings and if they're valid or not. But overall, let's see. It starts off by saying, marijuana is notorious for slowing certain cognitive functioning such as learning, memory, and attention span. Okay, so learning, memory, and attention span. All right, but new research in young people suggests that these cognitive effects, while significant, may not persist for very long, even among chronic users. So they're thinking that if you quit, after about 72 hours, you will start to see those problems start to go away. So the problems with learning, the problems with memory, the problems with paying attention, you will start to notice an improvement after about 72 hours. So that's good news. And what else do I want to tell you before we get into the more casual talk? Let's see. Okay, there was something else. All right, so they did a study. They did a meta-analysis of 69 studies, and that basically means you looked at a lot of the research around a topic, a lot of the different studies, and you took all of those studies and you did a meta-analysis, meaning you crunched the data and you ran your stats on what you had across all those studies to come up with a more general conclusion. All right, so it says young people who identified as heavy marijuana users scored significantly lower than non-users in a variety of cognitive domains, such as learning, abstraction, speed of processing, delayed memory, inhibition, and attention. Let's see. That was at the University of Penn, their med school there. They looked at everything from learning and memory to different aspects of executive functioning. And, executive functioning is, I always mention this in our videos when I talk to you guys. Executive functioning is the ability to plan, strategize, and execute. And that's one of the most important things and skills needed when you're trying to be in business for yourself, because you have to be able to strategize, right? You have to be able to actually execute tasks. You have to be able to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And you have to be able to conceptualize it and see it without it actually being done. You have to think about it in your mind. And so that ability to do that is linked to executive functioning skills. And so when you think about some of the trends that we're seeing today, where it seems like a lot of people seem to be either unwilling or incapable of just adulting or just doing what needs to be done, or even having the motivation to want to do what needs to be done. And, it could have something to do with, because there are people that are like that are not smoking marijuana, but we're just going to talk about people that smoke marijuana heavily. It does have a strong component of apathy that people experience when they smoke. And apathy is just like that inability to really feel anything. You just kind of don't really care. You're just blase blah, whatever, meh, it's that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people do it because they like that. Actually, they may not even recognize that they're being apathetic, but they kind of just feel better about their life. Maybe perhaps they were stressed out, or they, normally, but when you smoke, now all of a sudden everything is just kind of all right. Well, that's something actually happening in the brain, and it's creating a sense of apathy. So you have all these things going on when you're smoking marijuana. And so this is why, and I think that's enough information for me to share with you all. You know, I can refer you all to these articles. You all know how to Google. You can look at scholarly journals to look up more information. You can YouTube. Be careful of the sources that you look at. But basically, let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it. I presented you with some information that the field uses to identify the problems that come from marijuana use. There are benefits, no doubt. I actually had an experience at Georgetown Neuropsych. I did a year-long externship there. It was about 10 months, actually. And I would see a few clients each week, and I would do neuropsychological evaluations with them. Those neuropsych evaluations would take anywhere from like maybe 4 to 7 hours, depending on the person's level of ability. And so in doing that, I was able to really see how the brain works and what parts of the brain are responsible for certain things that humans do, or just like memory, speech, the ability to do this, like all of that kind of stuff. So it was very interesting. And when you see that, what I would do is after I would assess the person, I would administer the test, the different batteries, the battery of different tests. Then I would take all the information, score it, analyze the data, compare it to the norms of that population, and put what percentile they were in. And by putting the percentile is what determined whether or not someone was considered impaired, or their different levels, basically. And what we would see is that, people that were suffering from dementia or various ailments, they had cognitive deficits, is what we called it. And cognitive deficits can be in a number of areas. And so when we look at marijuana, they feel pretty certain that when you use the marijuana, it's creating these deficits. But the good part is that if you stop doing that, a lot of studies indicate that you immediately regain those abilities. They're no longer impaired, right? And so this is why you have heard me say in a number of videos, if things are not working out for you in business, if you've been unable to get motivated to get up and going with your idea or your goal, if you have been unable to set your goals, meet your goals, bounce back if you fail, if you've been unable to do those things, and you are a heavy weed smoker, I encourage you to consider detoxing. Consider detoxing. When you have a goal or something like it's not going right and you are a heavy smoker, one of the first things you can do is attempt to see how you feel after you detox. And you may start feeling improvements, like they said, within about 72 hours. But a lot of times the deficits that people experience, they're unaware of it. It's not anything you can actually necessarily tell. You would have to actually be tested, and someone telling you, well, this is what you did. You would have to actually go through that process, not high, and then go through that process intoxicated. You could either be acutely intoxicated, or you can be just still have marijuana in your system and have lingering effects. So when you look at how you perform on these measures, there are differences, and that's what the studies that I was citing was saying. You have the learning, memory, and executive functioning skills. The people that were in the smoking group, those people had those deficits. Hey, don't you start. They had deficits they had more deficits compared to the control group of non-smokers. And so, but like I said, the good news is that if you detox, within 72 hours, you start to improve these skills. And what that means from a business standpoint, the kind of advice that I've given people, if they are looking to make a change and they don't know why things are not working out for them or why they can't seem to get on the ball, if you do detox, then you might see some improvement immediately. And if you give it even longer, you could actually maybe function a little better. You might have some clarity. That mental fog that you have may go away. But the thing is, you have to get past the withdrawal, because as I explained to you in this diagnostic manual here, it is addictive. So weed is addictive, and you can't withdraw from it, and the symptoms could look like irritability, anger, not sleeping, loss of appetite, right? So if you start feeling bad all of a sudden when you stop smoking, you might actually decide to go right back to smoking because you don't feel too hot. Same thing with like heroin, same thing with alcohol. Once you develop a tolerance for something, and you just stop doing it, you can actually feel ill. But if you're able to make it through and you get clean and you get it out of your system, you may be in a better position to perform executive functioning tasks, which are the things that are required to help you start a business, improve a business, function in business. Executive functioning skills are very important. And learning and memory, that's very important. If your ability to learn new information is impaired, then if you're trying to take a class or something like that, it may be harder. It may be harder than it would have been if you weren't smoking. If you're unable to learn new things, let's say you want to learn how to day trade or, do the stocks or learn a new skill or a craft. If you're unable to learn new information and retain that information, you might get frustrated. You might not even understand why you're not able to grasp, but you may just give up, right? You might not even realize it, but you just give up. And part of that giving up can come from the apathy that we talked about. The apathy, that idea that you don't really care, or, you just kind of, you're not even aware that you don't care, but it's apathy. That's a part of the brain too. So you might not even realize what's going on. So this is why I'm not saying it's a magic cure. And I always let everybody know, if you are using marijuana to address physical or psychological pain, whereas if you were to not have that marijuana masking those things and helping with those things, you would actually perform worse without marijuana, depending on the severity. But let's say all things are equal and there is no psychological or physical pain that you're using the marijuana for, then the person that you are on marijuana, generally according to the studies, says that you will perform worse than if you were not on marijuana in the cognitive domains. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you all. I don't really pass judgment on people that smoke marijuana. I won't get into all of my personal business, but I assure you that I don't pass judgment on people that smoke marijuana. What I'm here to do is give information, and when I'm doing it in this format, I try to be more formal with how I present information. Now, last night, when I was watching the interview with Nipsey Hussle, and I put a casual statement about just saying, oh, I like that interview. I like what he was saying. And I said, what I said, everybody's not receptive to that, right? And even after explaining it this way, you still have people that, might not be receptive to it. But all I say to those people is that this is my opinion. This is my Facebook page. It's my timeline. So I'm going to share my opinions occasionally. And what I try to do is not just share a lot of like random opinions too often, or just like talking out the side of my neck. But usually when I speak on something and I give my opinion, it's usually because I have some qualification that I feel helps me to be able to speak on that, and that my opinion is informed. So I won't say fact, but I feel like I have, when it comes to this topic in particular, it's something that I was researching while I was in school, and I end up having to switch to a different topic because it would have been very difficult to get approval from the IRB, which is an institutional review board, because marijuana is still not legal at the federal level. So doing research with it, is very difficult to get approved, and I didn't want that trouble. So I switched my topic. But leading up to that point where I got that feedback that it would be too hard to do that dissertation, I had researched a lot and I had gotten a lot of information, and I'm telling you that on top of the class that I took, it was like a physiology class that it focused a lot on the neural aspect, the neurological basis of behavior. That class and the articles and stuff that I read really like got me thinking about how powerful the brain is, and I just became fascinated with it, and it helped me to understand why I was struggling in certain areas, and it just kind of reaffirmed what I already knew about some of the things that I needed to do. So I feel like I'm qualified to speak on it. I won't call myself an expert, but like I said, anytime that you studied, 7 years a topic, you do become familiar with it, and you do feel like, if you have something to say about it, that maybe there are some people out there that can appreciate your perspective or your take on the situation. Now, you run into issues where people misinterpret what you say. You have people that either they don't like what you said, they don't like how you said it, or whatever you said and how you said it doesn't matter, because they simply don't want to stop what they're doing, and they're going to look for ways to discredit you and find holes in what you're saying and all of the exceptions to the rule. And there's no need to do all of that, because I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm here to share the information that I have learned and combine that with my experience as a businesswoman that has been successful, and let you know that if you are smoking marijuana heavily and you are not achieving your goals, you may want to consider quitting. And it may only need to be temporarily until you actually get to that next level. And then you start up, you reward yourself, or however you look at it, whatever you do. And you may chill for a while, and you may decide, okay, now I'm ready to get to the next level. And you may decide to set a goal to detox and do that. That's really what I'm recommending is, if you're having any problems, I'm going to keep it about business, basically. I'll keep it about business. But if you want to stand a better chance of doing well in business, if you haven't been already, and you do have marijuana in your life, consider taking a break. Now, the comment that I made last night, my original comment, I stand by that 100%. And then I did have someone that commented on it. They didn't quite agree with what I had to say, and that's fine. I came back because I wanted to make sure it was understood that, first of all, there should be no assumptions made about me personally and what I do or don't do. That's not appropriate. If I mention something and I make generalizations on Facebook, it's more respectful to make sure that if you comment on it, keep it into general terms, right? And don't be presumptuous. Don't make assumptions about, me particularly, saying, oh, well, you must not smoke, or you must not understand why people smoke. You don't know me. But I'll say enough to say, based on my clinical training, based on my personal and professional experiences, I absolutely feel like if you're not smoking marijuana, that you have the competitive edge over yourself. You will probably perform better than your high self. Now, you relative to other people, there may be someone who has a different baseline than you. They may be naturally like an overachiever type of person, and if they're smoking marijuana, they might actually perform better than you even when you're not smoking marijuana. That doesn't mean that smoking marijuana, wouldn't make you perform even worse, right, if you were doing that. So you want to give yourself the best likelihood for success. You want to set yourself up for the highest probability that you can compete and succeed in setting your goals and getting into business. So just consider if you should give it up for a little while, you know, because what I used to always say, there was actually, it wasn't me that said it. There was someone at the health department that I used to work with, and she used to always tell the clients in the IOP, if you don't have a problem with it, you don't have a problem without it. And what she basically meant was, for all those people, they hold on to their marijuana habit, and they're like, oh no, I don't have a problem. I do it because I want to do it. Well, so if you don't have a problem with it, then it shouldn't be a problem to be without it for a little bit, especially if it's in the name of seeing if you can get on your A game and perform to the best of your ability. So last night's comment, it was not about saying that people that smoke marijuana are losers. I don't know. I heard that someone contacted me privately and told me how they took that comment, and it was difficult for me to understand how they had taken it and twisted it so much, because that's not what I was saying at all. Smoking marijuana doesn't make you a loser, right? And if there are successful people that smoke marijuana. What I was saying is that I like the fact that Nipsey Hussle acknowledged that he wanted to stop. He stopped smoking marijuana because he wanted to be more focused and have more clarity, and that I felt like I agreed that was a good idea. And I think that, like, with the circles that I run in, and the people that I've met, people that I aspire to, I don't want to say I aspire to be like, but they're like mentors, people that I look up to in certain areas, and like my peers in academia, like I recognize a pattern, and it's a lot of them don't do that. They don't smoke marijuana. And it made me wonder, like, if there's something about the community that I came from where this has just been normalized so much, because it's actually only about, I think the book told me it was about maybe 3% of people that smoke marijuana, and yet it's one of the most highly abused drugs. So I'm thinking, well, if it's only 3%, that means there's 97% of people that's not doing it. So that's the percentage for the world use of marijuana. Then I look at my community and I'm like, 3%? No. Oh, no. It's like every other person you bump into, it's like, yeah, I smoke. It's just understood. So I think we have to be careful how we let our environment and our community shape our belief system and our value systems about certain things, because it becomes normalized for us, and the whole while we might be oblivious as to what's going on in the bigger world, and that may not necessarily be something that is in your best interest, depending on how you're using it, how you're doing it, what kind of outcome you're getting. So it's definitely worth a consideration. It is, when you look in your community, are you only seeing about 3% of your circle of friends that do it? Because before I started leveling up, I would say probably 95% of the people I knew were doing it. They were doing it. Now I can say that the people that I talk to the most and hang with, they do not do it. So I think when you start seeing patterns like that, it's important to pay attention. Your interpretation of the pattern may not be correct, but I definitely think it's worth noting. And most importantly, are you satisfied with the quality of your life, with the quality of your financial affairs? And do you feel you've been, for some reason, unable to achieve your goals? If that's the case for you, and you're a heavy marijuana smoker, then I encourage you to give it a shot, detox, see how you feel afterwards, and then see if you get more clarity, more energy, and see if you're able to make something pop after that. No guarantees. No guarantees. You may feel worse after you stop. But I think it's worth a shot. I know quite a few people now who they say that they feel like a different person, especially if they've been doing it for like several years. They've been like in this kind of fog, never not in a fog. So now when they got clear-headed, it's like, whoa, I feel like a different person. I just have this certain clarity now, and now I feel very focused and driven and yada, yada, yada. I've heard that about 3 different times from people that are fairly close to me. So maybe that would be your experience if you tried it. Who knows? Okay, so there it is. The person who reached out to me individually, they told me that, hey, be careful with your delivery. Be careful how you say things. You may offend people. You want to make sure that people know that you're presenting information in a way that is factual, that lets people know what qualifies you to even be speaking on the matter, and not just to be putting up statements on Facebook that are appearing to just be my subjective kind of take on something, my opinion. So I have mixed feelings about that, because I feel like despite my desire to do a business blog, that comment was not intended for the business blog. It was not in the business group. It was on my personal page, and I even made that particular post private. I'm still a human being with rights to a personal life and opinions and ways of sharing information that do not have to subscribe to the life of a blogger or a psychotherapist or a psychologist. I'm just letting you know that despite my experience and qualifications, when I come and speak on things in an informal way, that's going to happen sometimes. I'm not going to always come to you with a DSM and with articles and studies. Sometimes we might just have some discussions about purely how I feel about something, what my thoughts are on it, and that's that. And then people can either chime in, they can make comments or whatever. But yeah, I'm not going to always be acting in the role of like an expert, or having to prove to the audience like why they should believe my position, because I'm really not trying to change anybody's mind about anything. I'm here to present information and not just facts. I'm here to present opinions that might be helpful to some people. So I wanted to clear that up. Thought it was an important topic to speak on. And if you all, let me know what you think in the comments. We have a few viewers here now. We had a lot in the beginning, and I know people get bored with the educational kind of post, but the topic about marijuana is important, because one thing about, like I said, in my community, mostly back then, mostly everybody that I knew was smoking marijuana. Mostly everybody. And now that they're legalizing and making it more accessible, I really think certain communities should be careful about how welcoming they are of this in our community. Because if certain communities already are not thriving, and you add something into their community that is known to create apathy and cognitive deficits, be careful. Be careful, because it's almost like, do we really want a community of people that are like glazed over and in a fog and don't even realize how much of a fog they're in? Do we really want that to be more prevalent? Do we really want like our children to think they could just go to the corner when they come of age or get their friends to buy something that, it's just cool to do that with no understanding of what it does to your brain? I just think it's important to be careful about accepting the marijuana just because the government says to you, oh yeah, it's okay now to do that. I'll be even more skeptical when the government says, yeah, go ahead and do that. And then you start to see like liquor stores on every corner. Now dispensaries on every corner, and everybody's just walking around high as a kite, feeling great for the moment, but as soon as they come down, they gotta get high again because they just have to continue chasing that high. And in the meantime, when they're doing that, how productive are they really being? Some people may be just doing business as usual, but I have a feeling a lot of people are not. So we need to be careful. Let's see. Hannah said, it's important for people to be mature enough to have a conversation that they may have opposing views on and be able to engage. It is important. It is important. And in respecting people's opinions, like when I tell you like what my opinion is, first of all, I'll be clear that it's an opinion. I don't really do this whole facts thing, hashtag facts. I don't use that cliche because I think demonstrating facts, that's questionable. And whatever you think your opinion is, you just think that's fact. That's just what it is. I try not to do that. I try to make it clear that it's an opinion. And if somebody gives an opinion back, they should also understand that what they're saying is their opinion, right? And nobody should put words in the other person's mouth, so I think it will be easier communication if people were mindful of those things. People need to think about how they would feel if they have an emergency. Would they like the physician to be under the influence? Well, so like, I don't know if you were here earlier, Hannah, but I talked about how I do the neuropsychological evaluations, and there is a thing such as fine motor skills that we test. And those little things can be affected, like your processing speed and different things, your coordination. So if you're a surgeon and you're high, I wouldn't want a surgeon that was high on marijuana. I can tell you that. I wouldn't, if he goes home and he hits a J, and after he does my surgery, then I'm fine with that, and I'm not judging the surgeon, but I don't want a surgeon to be high. I don't want a surgeon who just came down from a high. I don't want a surgeon who might actually be withdrawing from marijuana. That's a really good point, Hannah. It's a really good point. It's not about for me, I know there are people that have like a moral hang up about marijuana. That's not my deal. That's not my deal. I'm just saying, if you're trying to get to the bag, if you're trying to level up and make some things happen and it's not happening, you might want to consider that aspect of your life. It also can be costly too. And a lot of people claim they don't have money to start up businesses or to invest in the stock market, but they always have a J a couple times a day. I don't know exactly what the equivalent of that is, how much it costs. I know it depends on the strain and all of that, but I know it costs money. So that alone. The other thing is, like for me, I wouldn't want to be smoking and potential business partners know that I'm like a person that gets high a lot. I wouldn't want someone to misjudge me and to potentially like leave me out of a potential business opportunity because they think that I'm not serious enough, or they think that because I choose to smoke that I'm not worthy of a partnership, or that I won't be reliable, or that I won't be able to pass a drug test if I had to. I wouldn't want to, like, marijuana is not important enough to me to choose that and to risk opportunities. It's just not enough. So for instance, this externship I got offered at Hopkins, I would have to do a drug test. A lot of the externships require that we do drug tests. So I'm not going and buying any drinks or playing those games. It's not that important to me to risk an opportunity just to be able to smoke weed. I'm not doing that. It's just not worth it to me. to play those games. If you're in college, you're getting scholarships or financial aid, you fill out the FAFSA form, and there's a box on there to ask, have you been convicted of any drug charges, such as possession, intent to distribute, all of that. And if you have one, because a lot of people do get caught slipping, especially if you're hanging around people that do it and you're in a car or something, you get pulled over, nobody claims it, then it's everybody's. And you might have been a person who wasn't even smoking, and now you have like a possession charge. I've seen it happen. Like I said, when I was a substance abuse counselor at the health department, we had a lot of people always coming through because they got caught with the possession charge. And they don't think anything about it until that job or that externship that they want. Now they went, and they didn't pass. They didn't pass the background check because of something simple like that. It's just not worth it. So, like my coworker used to say, if you don't have a problem with it, you don't have a problem without it. And for those of you who you have people in your life and you're noticing certain things, I'll let you decide for yourself. But I will say, if you feel like it's not going to be too disruptive to your peace of mind, have the courage to speak up and let people know that you're concerned and that they shouldn't just brush it off just because it's simply marijuana. Speak up. And just like I did last night on Facebook, there might be more people that appreciate the message than people who did not appreciate the message. It's hard to tell, but don't be the kind of person that holds your tongue because you know that people don't want to hear what you have to say. Sometimes you need to just say what needs to be said. And people who are stuck in their ways or don't want to make changes, they are likely the ones that will be the most defensive and try to tell you what you've done wrong. But you can't get caught up in that. Have courage. Speak what you feel is your truth, and see if other people will benefit from that or take heed. There are some people that could be watching or looking at my page or watching this stream, and it might be the first time they've ever heard some of this information. Maybe everybody in their household, in their circle of friends, maybe everybody smokes, and maybe nobody is educated about the cognitive effects. So if nobody's talking about it and this person doesn't know, and now they've heard it on my page for the first time, and it makes them maybe look into it, even if just one person decides to stop and to change their situation and they get something good out of it, I feel good about that. So speak up and realize that if you're a person who doesn't get high and you're grown and you're getting older, even if you're not trying to be self-employed, it's very likely that you may end up becoming distant from people that continue to do that. Because sometimes you just, you like-minded people gravitate towards one another. And when you stop doing things that you did with other people, that might have been the only thing holding those people together. It might have been the only way they had fun together, or the only way they liked each other, or so now you're the one sober, right? And this person's still doing it, and you're just sitting there like, how you've been the person who was sober with a bunch of people that are drunk around? I don't think that's that fun. I don't think it's that fun. Now, I will say, when people are high, they usually chill for the most part, depending on what they're smoking, and what their general disposition is. But overall, especially if they're in the middle of smoking and everybody's passing a J, and you're just sitting there and you're like, well, I'm not doing this because I have some goals and I'm not gonna jam myself up. So you kind of just feel awkward. And then the conversation is different because the way people are talking when they're high, it may not be something you can relate to when you're sober. So those could be the reasons. And then people can also resent you for making changes in your life that they've been unable to make, or they're just not even resentful. They're just not ready to make those changes. And since you are, they just may not fool with you like that anymore, especially if you're going to be the kind of person that tries to hold them accountable. Don't force yourself on anybody, though. Don't force your views on anybody. But if it's someone you care about, then I feel like you at least have the responsibility to bring it up a couple times, a couple times in a respectful way. The person makes it clear they're not receptive, they're not ready. Go on about your business, do you, let them do them, and maybe revisit it way down the line when they may be in a space to hear it and receive it. I can tell you firsthand, when I'm not ready to do something, doesn't matter what anybody else says. I have to do it when I'm ready. And so knowing that about myself, I have to understand that other people could be like that as well. So, but yeah, take responsibility, just like he was saying in the interview. He said that he felt like if you're in a position of leadership, a decision like that can be powerful, basically. If you decide to stop smoking weed in your crew, now other people, because they look at you as a leader, now other people have stopped smoking. So it really could be a good thing. So you guys have comments, questions about the neurobiological underpinnings of marijuana, the cognitive effects of marijuana, any of those things. Anybody want any of that information? I'd be happy to discuss it with you all. And I try not to get into the jargon and all of that, but I was told that if I assume my audience is stupid, then that's condescending. And I don't want that to be the situation either. I don't assume the audience is stupid, but I do assume the audience hasn't had 8 years of clinical training and doctoral level training in neuro. So I would not expect to be getting into all the nuts and bolts of it, trying to explain to people, all of the, I think it's actually more rude to use all those big old words and things and know that your audience, most of them probably don't know what that is. So I like to just bring it down a few notches to make it so that people who are not in your doctoral program, because even people, I'm going to be honest, even people who are in the doctoral program with me, everyone's not a neuro student. So the neuro students are their own little kind of separate people, and the other doctoral students don't want nothing to do with neuro. So it's really like a real niche, and starting to talk about brain structures and axons of the nerve cell and synapses and neurotransmission, and y'all don't want to hear about that. Y'all don't want to hear about those type of details on here. But when I tell you it has an effect on your brain that's not great, can you just take my word for it? If you want further explanation, let me know. But I think word to the wise is sufficient. Lorenzo, you said, I wish my neighbors could hear this. Why? Do you question, can the secondhand weed smoke harm you? So secondhand smoke can harm you, but how often are you around it? Because one, even if you just smoked one time, that wouldn't be like extremely harmful or anything. So secondhand smoke, just like secondhand cigarette smoke, yes, it's harmful. But like if you're always in the room with someone who's smoking marijuana, or you're in the car and you know how it gets real smoky and everything if the windows are up, I mean, you might catch contact. But how often is that happening? Probably not enough to really mess with your brain. They smoke every day and I smell it through the walls. Oh, yeah. And the thing is, when you're not a smoker, especially if you've never been a smoker and you smell it, it can be like a real awful smell, especially the loud and the stuff they're doing these days. It can be really skunkish smelling. And it's very intrusive, very invasive. Hannah, you said I do. you know what? I don't even know what I said that made you say I do, but if you clarify, maybe it was a question that you had, or you say you do want to hear about all of this brain anatomy stuff. Yeah, it's terrible. So now, even if you were a smoker yourself and you've quit and you have to smell it, that's aggravating too. You may have been a smoker who quit and you really enjoy getting high. And you actually don't want to hang with your buddies that get high anymore because now you're tempted. You don't really want those temptations. So you actually kind of fade those people because you just don't want to have to be reminded of it. You don't want to smell it. You don't want to see them with the eyes red and looking, you just don't want. You say, yes, speak neuro to you. Oh, girl, look, I love talking about this stuff, but what I notice is it puts people to sleep, or you start talking to someone if they're not in your program and they just kind of start losing eye contact, looking around, and you just know they're disinterested. But let me know whatever questions that you have. That is definitely what I'm studying and doing a dissertation on neuro. I won't be doing it on marijuana because, like I said, it couldn't get approved, or it would have been very difficult to get approved. But I enjoy the neuro talk. Anytime I find somebody that has like an interest in neurology or anything brain related, I love talking about it. But it's not many people that actually like to talk about it. So, like my buddy told me, he was like, don't assume that people are stupid. And I'm like, I don't assume people are stupid, but I assume that, most people don't want to hear about it. And it's not something that he was like, well, you should, if you're supposed to be becoming a doctor, or you have to learn how to explain these things to people. And I'm like, I can explain it on a very basic level, but how am I going to cram like the 5 years of a doctoral program and what I've learned into like a brief conversation and get somebody to understand why marijuana is, harmful to your brain? It is hard to kind of summarize it. Yeah, but Lorenzo, I hope they get it together. Um, I know that's aggravating. So anybody else? Now keep in mind, we're not just talking about smoking weed here. I'm even talking about the medical marijuana. But the medical marijuana that has the high CBD content is less. It doesn't get you high, but it still has some effects. But THC is what we're mainly concerned about, and it doesn't just have to be smoked. It can be the vape pens, the edibles, any way that you get it into your system, it affects. It affects you. You need to trick your brain. I'm a migraine sufferer, and I taught AMP for years in tech colleges. It's stimulating to my brain. Yes, anatomy and physiology is awesome, and the more once you take the basic class and then you start getting into like the more specific breakdown, it's great. Edibles only. Yeah, because if you're going to do it, I recommend the edibles over smoking it, especially if you're rolling blunts or using like the papers and all that. Anything that you're smoking and burning and taking into your lungs is not great. So I hope there's no disputing that. I think everyone knows that. So migraines, well, it can be a number of causes. And to be honest with you, I haven't even covered like the roots of migraines. I have not even covered that. But I know that I have a book. We didn't cover it in the class that I was in, but I'm wondering if I were to look in the book, looked at the index, and looked up migraines, would it have some explanations about the various causes. It can be a number of causes when you get migraines. Those migraines are no joke. I don't know if I've had them before, but I think I have, because it was like so bad I could not tolerate sound, light, movement, nothing. It was like I had to be balled up on the bed, completely still, and just like no stimulation of any kind, and not many medications like Motrin or anything. It didn't really help. But I think melatonin, if I'm not mistaken, the supplement melatonin, I think helps people with migraines. Hey, Herb. So we're down to 2 people that I can tell. Hormonal stress diet. Ooh, 25 years of those. Oh, man. And then if you have kids, I'm telling you, and they like making noise in the other room, anything. It's just like you cannot tolerate it. I haven't had very many of those, but when I had them, I was like, this feels like, this is crazy. It almost makes you sick to your stomach. It's so uncomfortable. It's not like just a basic tension headache, which those suck too. But the migraines are their own special kind of suck. But yeah, good luck with that. 25 years. I don't know how often you get them, but if what I had is that, then I'm so sorry to see you going through that. Okay, let's see. All right. Death. Oh no, don't say that. But I know what you mean, though. You just would like to be unconscious for a moment until you get yourself together. That's why like trying to just go to sleep might be helpful. But more importantly, if you go to a neurologist, because I did go to a neurologist to try to see what was the cause of my chronic headaches, but they weren't as bad as the migraine, but it was still like chronic headache. I went to the neurologist and they prescribed Topamax. It's actually it's mainly used for epilepsy, I want to say. And then I took it for a little while. I didn't notice any major change, but the good part about Topamax is that it reduces your appetite. So I kind of got like a little benefit there because I lost a little bit of weight. Yeah, but Topamax, if you've been dealing with this for 25 years, I know you've seen a neurologist already. But if you haven't, go ahead and see a neurologist and see if they prescribe Topamax or recommend melatonin. I'm not giving medical advice. I guess I have to have a disclaimer. I'm not giving medical advice. All right. So tonight's topic, I'm sure a lot of people don't want to hear about, because people do not want to give up their weed. I understand. I get it. And some people probably would do worse without it because they're dealing with a lot of pain, emotional pain, physical pain. And so honestly, you might be better off continuing with your weed and, do what you feel is best for yourself. You've seen plenty. Nobody gets to the bottom of it. Or they just say it is what it is, and that's just what you have to deal with. Girlfriend to girlfriend. Yep. I don't want to get sued on here. Someone say, yeah, she told me to take this, and you know how people get. Any other questions? Questions about cognitive effects of marijuana and how it could be hindering you from being your best version of yourself while trying to get to the bag. Making sure I'm putting that caveat in there. We're talking about business and how it may be affecting you as an entrepreneur. If there are no other questions, then I'm gonna let you guys go. But if you want to ask me some questions, you want to inbox me privately. Like I said, I'm not here to do formal therapy or anything like that, but I was a substance abuse counselor. I do have information that I can share, educational information. If you're interested in trying to get clean from any drug that you may be struggling with, you can inbox me and I can try to direct you to some local resources so that you can get some confidential help. But please don't just normalize it because of the community that you live in and you see that everyone's doing it. Don't necessarily normalize it. It may not be what's in your best interest. Hey, Damien. How are you? Did you discuss the possible link between marijuana use and bipolar disorder or schizophrenia? There's definitely, I did not discuss that. The psychosis component, I didn't get into all of that. I thought that might have been too heavy for people. But the article that I referenced definitely gets into that. Hold on one second. Let me go back. There's a nice little short video too that I found in the article that I looked at. But hold on, let me pull it up. Let's see where to go. Let me see if I can try to remember what it was saying in general. I think it was saying that marijuana use increases your disposition for potentially developing schizophrenia or psychosis, because psychosis can be a component of schizophrenia, but all psychosis is not schizophrenia. And so you do have an increasing number of cases where people are smoking marijuana or using marijuana and they have a reaction that is psychotic, meaning they are either perceiving things that are not really there, whether it be visually, tactile, meaning you can feel something, hear, visual and auditory hallucinations are most common. But another component of psychosis, I want to say, is delusions. And that is believing something that is just not real. Like you think that you're the president of the United States and that, there's a plot for somebody to come and kidnap you or something. Those are the kind of situations that are like delusions. And it's no joke. Now, bipolar, I can't say that I recall seeing a bunch of articles that had the bipolar and the marijuana. Yeah, the paranoia. Well, see, in the paranoia, that's like, so that, not quite psychosis, but it can definitely be an indicator that you might be on your way. Sometimes it might just be a bad high that you had, like you maybe had a strain or something that just didn't sit well with you, or made you think that you could hear your heart beating and now it sounds like it's stopping and you think you're about to die, or you're just paranoid and think that the police about to come get you. Like I've seen all of that kind of stuff, just like in my community hanging out with folks cutting up. I've seen it. But there's some stuff that people smoking now that's just ridiculous. I don't know what they're mixing it with. I don't know what they're doing, but gotta be careful, man. Gotta be careful. And it just looks weird now. You just see it and it's all these different colors and looks fuzzy and neon color. It just, to me, I just think that something's not right about that. It's just getting to be a bit much now. So, Lorenzo, you still watching? You gonna snitch on your neighbors? you gonna snitch on them, or you don't believe in snitching? Snitches end up in ditches. Snitches end up with stitches. So I do have a book, a textbook that I really enjoyed, and I think it's over there under my bed. But it was a very nice textbook that had very detailed information, and it was a decent way of showing the information about neuro behavioral psychology, I think is what it was called. Yeah, it was a good textbook. I learned a lot from that class. The program has been transformative for me. Going in 3 years ago, I look at things a lot differently now after having a lot more training. And being exposed to so much information. Like the amount that we read in this program, that's what takes up the most time, is all of the reading that we have to do. And then we also always have like research and papers and things that we have to do. So when you're like taking in that amount of information and learning a lot, and you're enjoying it and you're eager about it, you want to share what you're learning with people. But sometimes people get it twisted. When you share, now they're feeling judged, or now they're feeling like you think you're better than them because you have this information. But it's really just that you're passionate about what you're learning. You want to talk to people about it, and it doesn't always go over well. But the program has been very transformative for me. I look at things kind of differently now, and I understand there's a neural basis for like all behavior, in addition to what we don't learn in school, which I think is a spiritual component. But besides the spiritual component, everything is controlled by the brain. So if you understand this, you understand why people do what they do, why they think what they think. It just helps you to really be able to look at people and accept them, for who they are. Not necessarily that you embrace them, but you just kind of have an understanding of why people think and behave the way that they do. It's all a result of something going on up here, in my opinion. I'll be sure to say that, in my opinion. Okay. I think we're done here. Thank you for everybody that tuned in tonight, however brief. I hope that you learned something. I prefer that you not be offended, but if you are, I'll be honest. You're going to have to get over that, or you possibly are not meant to be on my live streams. If you can't handle it, you can't handle my opinions. I assume that the people that come here and double back when they see that I'm live, I'm assuming they come back because so far they like hearing what I have to talk about. That's going to be the assumption. I'm not going to assume that anyone is going to come in here and watch my live streams just to be a troll or to start stuff or to, we're going to assume the best and assume that people come here because they like what I'm talking about. All right, so I'm going to let you all go. I'm not doing my usual, boss up and all of that because it's not the boss up challenge, but I wanted to give you some food for thought, give you some things to think about. And I've definitely been on here long enough. It's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to let you all go. You all have a good evening. Inbox me if you have any questions or if you know anybody or you yourself needs help. Inbox me and I can point you in the right direction to get some resources. All right? Y'all take care.